Good afternoon, not a good morning today. It took me a while to get here. Today I was preparing with my wife doing some of the preparations that we needed to do for the strike, the harbor workers strike that is starting at midnight tonight. And we went out to prepare to purchase some basic items just in case, right? We were short in storage and in some products and supplies, and we spent the morning doing that. So I'm sorry that I was a little bit late for some of you that were waiting out there, but here I am, and today is September the 30th. Anno Domini podcast 80, episode 82. This is where we are. And who knows what is going to happen by the end of this week, right? Who knows what the future is bringing to us? What we do know is that, as Dr. Bartlett, my good friend, usually says, and he says that all the time, we are not helpless. We are not hopeless. We have the Lord with us, and we have a solid ground underneath our feet to step on. This is what brings peace to our heart. This is what brings stability to our emotions. And I was praying with my wife this morning, and the Lord brought back to my mind scripture in Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3, that says that the Lord will conserve in total peace those whose hearts, or whose minds, actually, not hearts, whose minds are fixed on him because they trust him. So we are, as God's people, we trust him, and whatever comes in our way, whatever happens, again, as I have been saying that over and over again, whatever happens between now and November the 5th, whatever happens between November the 5th and January 6th, whatever happens between January the 6th and January 20th, 2025, the day that the new president is going to be inaugurated, whatever happens between now and then, we know that the Lord is with us, and that is what brings security, safety, and peace to our minds and our hearts. We're diving into the 28 principles of freedom that made America the most powerful and free nation, the freest nation in human history. And I want to show you two highlights, two headlines that I saw. This one from last week, September 23rd, 2024. The New Yorker online, they asked this question. This is a headline for an article. Is it time to torch the Constitution? So they're not even hiding it anymore. They're using very aggressive verbs like, is it time to destroy the Constitution? Is it time to torch, to burn it to the ground, right? Some scholars say that the Constitution is the one to blame for our political dysfunction and that we need to start over. Actually, we did start over, I believe, and this is a topic that I have not brought here yet. The topic of the second Constitution, the Constitution of the Civil Rights Movement from the 60s. And this is just mind-blowing, and I'm going to keep that and to hide that for now, so that I can fully explore this in the future. This is a book that I read a couple of months ago, and I have been holding the book and the content to talk about it more in depth and fully with you in a later episode. So this is what, number one, what I saw this week, and in the same week that this headline on the New York came out, I follow this guy, Orrin McIntyre. He's like, I told you, he's a brilliant guy. It's a brilliant mind. And he said, we simply are not the same people the Constitution was designed to govern. Remember what people that is? When you go back to John Adams said, our Constitution is fit only to a moral and religious people. This is what Orrin McIntyre is saying. He's saying we are not moral, we are not religious anymore. And this is why he says we are not the same people the Constitution was designed to govern. So this should give us like a hard stop here. We should meditate upon these words, and especially about what's coming. If the Constitution is not governing us anymore, because this is on us, this is our fault, this is us, we are the ones to blame, we are the guilty ones in this process. What is coming next? Is another constitution coming next? Kamala Harris said before, and she'll keep saying that. The whole Democrat Party is going to say that if she wins, as soon as she does, they are going to pack the Supreme Court. They're going to change completely the Supreme Court and transform it into a second legislative body, pretty much. There's not going to be a judicial system or a judicial branch anymore, neutral, impartial, right? It is just going to be blown to smithereens. So I wanted to bring these two meditations here for you before we dive into the topics, the principles we have today. And all of these things, these meditations, these thoughts bring my mind back to Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 16. And I have been hammering, beating this drum, and repeating this over and over and over again. This is what the prophet Jeremiah used as God's voice to his people. This is what he said back then to Israel. This is what the Lord says: stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. I believe that if we as Americans, I am not an American officially yet, but I am American at heart. If we go back to the ancient paths, and what is the ancient paths? Where is it? The ancient paths are, number one, the Word of God. Number two, the founding documents. We are diving into the founding documents. This is what we've been doing now. This is the second week, and we're going to go 2 more weeks diving into these principles. These principles are the backbone, the blueprint, or in biblical terminology, the ancient paths. All Americans need to do is to go back to those principles again. And we will find rest to our souls, because this country, based upon these principles, had rest for many, many years, for 150 years at least. So that is our proposition here. So let us go to our two topics, two principles today. Number 13, protection against human frailty. And we're talking about the human nature. The key question, according to scholars, especially the conservative constitutional scholars, the key question that the founding fathers were diving into in the constitutional republic was: will we, as the first government to be not elected but creating this new government, are we going to be able to create, for the first time in human history, a government that is efficient, but at the same time protective of individual freedoms and unalienable rights? What does it mean for a government to be efficient? Is a big government that works well, meaning that force people to do what they want? That is the question here of what is it for a government to be efficient. For example, right now, after the Helene hurricane started in the Gulf and then hit Florida and Tennessee and Georgia and Tennessee and South Carolina and North Carolina, that is the inefficiency of government, right? They are not doing anything, or not pretty much. They are sending our money somewhere else, not to where these guys need, and that region called Appalachia, parts of Appalachia. So that is government inefficiency. What would be government efficiency right now? It would be for our taxpayer dollars to be used to help our brothers and sisters in those 4 states. By the way, Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, said, Biden, I want zero from your money. I don't want federal grants. I don't want federal money. Send the money to Tennessee, Georgia, South and North Carolina. I don't need it. So this is amazing to see a governor say that, right? Usually they drain and suck all of the money, whatever is available, they will suck it up. right? Suck it in. So, what does it mean for the founding fathers and their mindset for a government to be efficient? Is for a government to work well. Now, their question is, how can a government work well, but at the same time not to overcome, not to overpass, not to bypass, not to crush, not to control, not to manipulate, not to crush protective individual freedoms and unalienable rights? How to protect that? Because a government, to be efficient, they will not be protective of individual freedoms and unalienable rights. So you see that the founding fathers here were in a conundrum. How are we going to do this? We want an efficient government, but for a government to be efficient, in order for a government to be efficient, we need to be big. We need to be all powerful. We need to be very efficient in terms of size and powers and controls. We don't want that. We want for people to have their freedoms protected. We want for people to have their unalienable rights given by God protected. But we cannot. There's no way we can do that. So you see that I'm spending money here showing you the mindset, what was in the minds of the founding fathers back then, and that was the key critical issue that they had. And then Alexander Hamilton on Federalist Paper 25, he says, somehow it's what he says here summarizes this conundrum, summarizes what they were up to. He says, "For it is a truth which the experience of all ages has attested, that the people are commonly most in danger when the means of injuring their rights are in the possession of those of whom they entertain the least suspicion." What is the translation of that? This is the translation of what Hamilton was talking about. We trust, we the government, we the first cabinet members of this government, in the three branches of government, legislative, executive, and judicial. We trust we the people much more than we trust ourselves as leaders. The greatest dangers arise when leaders are so completely trusted that we the people stop monitoring them. So they were saying, guys, we are granting ourselves these powers, limited, restricted, like numbers. There are 17 powers that were given to the legislative body. There are 8 powers to the executive body. So these are the powers that allow us to at least manage and govern 13 colonies turned into 13 states, right? But do not trust us fully. Do not believe that because you trust, you entrusted us. You selected us to govern this machine, to govern this beast, that we are not going to become tyrannical, because we may break the law. We may go beyond what the law gives us the power and the freedom to do, or the right to do, out of human nature, because we are, according to Jeremiah 16:9, we are corrupt in our hearts. We can do that. So do not trust us fully. Please keep monitoring us. And this, guys, is what is never done today. In absolutely rare exceptions, this is done today. Because of the mess that the federal government especially has been doing in the country, now we see more people, more institutions, organizations, 501c3s, think tanks, these, groups of people just trying to do something, just trying to at least inform all of us of what's going on in the federal government and the state government as well. But it's completely out of control right now. It's a beast out of control. Because they believed that even the good intentions of the hearts of the government, as we have this saying here in America, we have the same saying in Brazil: the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So It does not matter what good intentions these guys elected to government positions tell us, affirm to us, promise us that they have in their hearts, right? The problem is that when they cross the line, are elected, and get there to the executive branch, to the legislative branch, or to the judicial branch, what usually ends up happening is that they break our trust in them and they do whatever they want to do. And we see this more intense each day and each year here in the United States of America. Why won't the original Constitution ever be obsolete according to the scholars? Because the Constitution was designed to control something that will never change, which is human nature. And we are back to the Bible. We are back to Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. That will never change. And because that will never change, we know that the Constitution should endure. Why? Because the Constitution, what it does is it restricts, controls, and limits the powers of the government over the people, over our freedoms and our rights. For example, just giving you an example here, Second Amendment. It is not that it's not only or merely that they cannot take that away. The Constitution limits their powers to do that, to eliminate the Second Amendment. You see how it happens? The Constitution was given to restrict government, not to restrict people. Let me say that again. Let me repeat it. The Constitution was made to restrict the government's actions, not the people's actions. In my country, we have the opposite. In Latin American constitutions, you have the opposite. In Europe, in Africa, in Middle East, in Asia, you have the opposite. The constitutions tell in a written document what people can and cannot do in their majority, the majority of the documents, right? Here in America, the document that we call the Constitution, the structure of government, the framework of the government, as Anthony Scalia would say, it is responsible and it was created for one reason and one reason alone: to restrict and to limit the powers of the government concerning or related to the rights and the freedoms that individuals have. So, let's go to the last topic for today. 14th principle: property rights are essential to liberty. If you remember, in the preamble of the Declaration of Independence, it talks about only 3 out of 22 rights, unalienable rights, meaning rights that God gave us. It says life, it says liberty, it says pursuit of happiness. And I told you last week that pursuit of happiness, that was the philosophical creation of John Locke, was exchanged here in America. I'm making a mistake here. John Locke created, he talked about life, liberty, and property. John Locke did talk about property. So he said that these three liberties or rights, right to life, right to liberty or freedom, and right to property, were given by God. Here in America, what the founding fathers did was they exchanged or replaced the word property with the word or expression pursuit of happiness, which is in their minds exactly what it is: property, not only physical, not only real estate property, not only land, plot of land, soil. No. Pursuit of happiness means and entails property in all senses: intellectual property, subjective property, everything that is under my control. My family, I am a husband, I am the head of my family. Somehow God sees that as my property, and this is why I need to take care and provide and love and defend what is mine: my family, my principles, my values, my theology, my belief system, my worldview, my mindset, all of these things are my properties. So the pursuit of happiness is what makes me achieve happiness, is to defend the properties that I deem to be important for my own life. Psalm 115:16 was quoted by the founding fathers several times. They said, the heavens belong to the Lord, but he, the Lord, has given the earth to the humanity. Meaning, everything that is on earth belongs to humanity, belongs to human beings. Everything that belongs in heaven, that is in heaven or are in heaven, belong to the Lord. It is not, I'm not saying that, the Bible is not saying that what is here, material things here on earth, did not belong to the Lord also. What it's saying is that it is under our purview, it is under our control, it is under our responsibility, everything that the Lord gives us here as material things on this planet. And this is based on what John Locke talked about in his second essay or treatise on freedom, on liberty. He said, for men, being themselves the workmanship of one omnipotent and infinitely wise maker, meaning God, they, meaning men, are his property, whose workmanship they are, made to last during his, not one another's, pleasure. So if we as men, as human beings, as creatures, as the crown of God's creation, if we are properties of God, if God has in us his property, because we are his workmanship, we were created by him, it means that anything that I create myself, anything that I come up with myself, anything that I acquire, that I purchase, that I bargain, everything that is now under my control, it means that those things are my property, exactly like I am God's property. The problem here is, and Supreme Court Justice George Sutherland, and he was a Supreme Court justice he was born in 1862 and he died in 1942. He said, we have to make a difference here, to stress this difference between the right of property and the right to property, because if not, we're going to be, this is what he is saying, I'm translating here, we're going to be a communist country. Everybody has right to properties, and this is why and how, the wording he used in his opinion on January 21st, 1921, in his annual address to the New York State Bar Association. That was an article that he put out, not in a Supreme Court opinion. This is what he said. It is not the right of property, which is protected by the Constitution, but the right to property. Because property per se, he says, has no rights, but the individual does. Humans do. So, to give a man his life, but deny him his liberty, is to take from him all what makes his life worth living. But on the other hand, to give humans their liberty, but to take from them the property, is also to still leave them as slaves. So he goes on here by saying, he expands this understanding by saying that when God gives man his life, and if God denied, along with life, God denied liberty, the life of that man would not be worth it. He would be a slave. But also, at the same proportion, if God gives people liberty, but do not give people the understanding of the right to property, the man, the woman, the human beings in general will still be left as slaves. And this is why John Adams, our second president, said that property must be secured, or liberty cannot exist. He was not advocating for sharing equally or forcing the equal distribution of property to everybody. This would be socialism, communism. This is not what he is saying. He is saying that if you own a property, that property you own should be secured by the state primarily. But if the state fails you, because that is one of the responsibilities of the government. And if the government fails you, you are supposed to defend and to stand for and to secure your properties. So, deep thoughts here. And again, we could go on and on and on, but I am just laying the groundwork here, the superficial understanding of each one of these principles. Next meeting or episode tomorrow, we're going to be talking about how the free market economics has completely shaped, formatted what America is economically speaking. When we talk about fiscal responsibility, you will understand tomorrow where does that come from, and that comes from the idea of free market economics. So I hope you can be with us tomorrow for episode 83 of the Anno Domini podcast on the 28 principles of freedom that made America the most powerful and the freest nation in human history. Till then, may the Lord bless you, bless your family, and I hope to see you tomorrow. God bless you. Bye-bye.